further independence with triplets, besides just doing this in your left hand, one of the most common ways in which sort of elevates your playing into at least a bebop level and perhaps bebop and beyond, as the term coined by John Riley's famous book, is to use your bass drum and snare drum and or tom-toms to break up that eighth note triplet. But we still keep the triplet going because, as we know, once again, the underlying pulse for jazz, and it's really important to understand what that feels like. So if we just take our basic eighth note triplet and we put the first note of each one on the bass drum, the other two notes in your left hand, you're going to get a very, very common, it's a fill, but it's also used in the context of ongoing beat patterns all the time by drummers throughout history, especially post Kenny Clarke. So that would sound like this. This is the tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Seems simple enough, and if you'll notice, I'm accenting the last note of the triplet slightly. I'll play it two different ways for you. This is without an accent. It sounds very like a German waltz a little bit, but if I accent the upbeat, it puts a little more swing in it. I'm going to play that for you with the ride cymbal and the hi-hat, and I'm going to use the tom-toms in that context a little bit too. So that would sound like this. That's using just with the bass drum on one note and the other two notes of the triplet in my left hand. Now I'm going to show you how to break that triplet up, except this time I'm going to put two notes on the snare drum and the last note in the bass drum. So again, we have our eighth note triplet pulse, triplet, 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 triplet. Seems simple enough, and then we're going to put that into the context of the jazz beat. And once again, this is for independence practice, using the eighth note triplet as a basis to help create a really good, consistent swing feel with all of your fills and all of your patterns you do during your ongoing beat pattern. That was the eighth note triplet that way. Now we're going to try it. Same idea, and and once again, there's endless combinations of these. There's about 10 basic ones that hopefully you'll get to see today or in a later video. But the next one would be to use one note on the snare drum and two notes on the bass drum, and that sounds like this. In the context of the beat. Sounds like that. Some people may be wondering about foot pedal technique. I use a combination of flat-footed, which I was just playing. That's my foot totally flat on the pedal. And sometimes I play with my heel up and use the pedal like a double stroke in my hand if I'm playing faster or need to play louder. It's really up to you. There's no right or wrong. Whatever makes the music happen is the exact right thing. So just try a bunch of different things and do what works well for you. Okay, the next division of our triplet has the two notes on the bass drum, the first two notes of the triplet, and the last note in my left hand. So that will sound like this. And in the context of the beat, it sounds like this. So continuing with dividing our eighth note triplet between the bass drum, snare drum, and tom-toms in the context of an ongoing beat pattern for jazz, or even using it as a fill. There's only a couple ways you can divide it. It's using two notes in one limb and one note in another, or vice versa. So the next level of that is to put the single note in the middle. So I'm going to do two notes on the bass drum, the first and last note of the triplet, and the middle note with my left hand. And that sounds like this. In the context of the jazz beat, of course, you're going to hear my bass drum shuffling along, and this is going to fill in the cracks. That goes like this. I'm just going to flip that right around and do just the opposite. So my left hand is going to be shuffling and the bass drum is going to fill in the crack. The way you can also, when you're using two notes in your left hand, you don't need to just stick to one drum or the other. You can certainly do things like this. As I've said many times, just feel free to experiment with as many different motions and movements and directions as possible. It's only going to make you freer as a player when you get to play in the real music.